2025 marks 30 years of Black Swamp Percussion. After 30 years, you learn a thing or two about how to make instruments and run a business. But a lot can happen in that time. People come and go, and sometimes things just don't work out. After 3 decades of Black Swamp, Eric has continued to march to the beat of his own drum, and that beat is the persistent refusal to fail. Making instruments has many stages. You need to decide what you'd like to make and how to go about making it. That requires research, experimentation, and as Eric's former band director puts it,
intestinal fortitude.
Throughout the 30 years Black Swamp has been around, Eric and the team have met a lot of amazing people and fellow instrument makers. The percussion community as a whole values experimentation and innovation while still honoring the heritage and traditions of the instruments they create. That is where we introduce 2 craftsmen that share these values and share the same persistent refusal to fail and intestinal fortitude.
Here we go. I've got my 2 friends, D.L. Turkington, who I met first at some point in history.
Oh, there he is.
Hey. And then Steve Crawley.
Steve looks like he's playing Fortnite.
Oh, God. Here we go. Who is another guy I met on the internet. So Steel has a company called Kentville Drums and does vintage restoration and Kangaroo hide heads. And then Steve Crawley has a company called Evitz Drums, and he makes drums.
Steel hit me up online and organized to come visit one day, and from there we've done multiple projects over the years together, bouncing ideas off each other. And
in Australia, there's so few drum builders and even less drum restorers. Steve and I have, in many ways, very similar jobs, and we're the only 2 people in this city that are doing anything like that.
It all coming together, this project actually made sense to me. We all get along really well. We all do top quality work. It just made sense. It's different to what I would usually offer. I don't do orchestral drums, so nothing like an Evitz product would usually be. So it's a chance to, be involved with something special and unique and different to what I would usually do. So
when the right sort of collaborations come along, it kind of re-energizes things a little bit for me, and it's exciting to get involved in different projects, especially with companies and builders that I respect or look up to, which is definitely the case with Eric and Black Swamp. It's a great honor because you've been a real mentor to a lot of people in the industry, but definitely to me since my early days. To see those like early pictures of you making mallets and tambourines and things also in a garage, and then like what you've grown it to now. Yeah. And each time you've invited me on board to be a part of one of your projects, that's been a very meaningful thing to me because, you're someone that I look up to.
It's June 2024, and Eric has just returned home from a visit to Australia. He didn't know it yet, but he had just met the craftsman that would make the iconic shell of the 30th anniversary snare drum. After visiting with Steel, Eric was introduced to Steve Crawley, the founder of Evitz Drums. Eric was impressed after seeing Steve's work up close and personal. It wasn't until after Eric had returned home that he knew who would craft the 30th anniversary drum shell.
So our 30th anniversary was coming up. Everybody here talked about what are we going to do, and kind of knew that there's going to be a drum involved. So he's talking about shells, right? That's the most identifiable part. There is a guy that I just met that makes shells, and they're very unique. So I went there in May, I hung out with Steel, and then went to your place. First time I had seen that and was just like super impressed. You make your own shells. I mean, that's super unusual that someone actually takes raw veneer, lays it up, puts it in molds, and makes your own shells.
For me, it was always, if I'm going to make drums, I'm going to make the shells. And in Australia, we've got such a wide range of amazing hardwoods that you can pull so many different sounds from. That from there, it was, all about experimenting. I tried every type of layup you could do, all the different types of glues, all the different types of pressing methods. It just became like a rabbit hole. I would hate to know how much veneer was wasted in getting to the point of the drum shell that I make now that I'm happy with. And even to this day, there's little tweaks I make each year. Getting a nice clean seam when forming a drum shell, that's a very challenging process. I feel like I've developed a shell now which is extremely round, extremely rigid. I use a combination of glues in that shell to ensure the rigidity and the strength in the shell as well. But it's been definitely a work in progress to get to this point.
Then I contacted you. I sent you some ideas. I knew I wanted Jarrah involved. That's such a kind of iconic wood of Australia. And then something else kind of interesting. I didn't want a brown drum. There's a lot of brown drums. What do you got? Can you explain where you found that and what that actually is?
The Sotsas veneer that we ended up going with on the shells, so the outer ply and the inner ply with the jarrah in the core, is actually an engineered species. Doesn't mean it's not real wood, it's real timber. They'll slice the veneer and then they'll dye it. So in this case, it's the black dye and the grey dye, or whichever colours they use, and they'll glue that veneer back up into a block, and they run the wood in different ways, and they slice it again, and then they get those consistent patterns. I remember when we looked at the Sotsas veneer, it was a bit out there, and I remember thinking, oh man, I don't know if this is going to work. Like, it's very busy, it's very expensive, but then once we saw them chop down into the 5-inch deep shells, it just sit perfectly, and I think it all started making sense with what you described to me about the project. It's a 12-ply shell, outer ply of Sotsas, then there's 10 plies of jarrah, and then an inner ply of the grey Sotsas veneer as well. I like to think of jarrah as getting a nice timber snare drum and a nice steel snare drum and bringing them together. So I think it's a real special and unique drum.
You know, it sounds great, and I wanted that sandwich look.
If you're a real drum nerd, you see those little things.
I say, guys, it's the sum of the details.
Kentville Drums is well known for their world-class Kangaroo hide heads. Those in the orchestral world know that a hide head on a snare drum, tambourine, or timpani has an unmistakable warmth and timbre that cannot be easily emulated. Steele knows his stuff and makes a genuine handcrafted head that doesn't cut corners. Black Swamp uses Kentville Kangaroo hide heads because we know quality when we see it and hear it. Kentville Drums offers a traditional experience with a quality that is unmatched.
Can you explain to me, what are the differences between calf and kangaroo?
The main difference is that kangaroo hide's much stronger than calf hide or goat hide is. It's to do with the kind of grain structure of the hide, the way the fibers of the skin are sort of bundled together is in a much more random kind of arrangement with kangaroo skin. So you could imagine something like grains sort of all running in the same direction for cow and goat hide versus kangaroo has more of kind of a cross-hatched kind of configuration to it. And so that gives it a lot more strength, especially obviously on very thin heads is where you would notice it. So the kind of heads that the orchestral players are using are what we've supplied to you guys for the anniversary snares.
I found on snare drums that the pitch, I found that it didn't fluctuate as much as calf does.
But yeah, the strength is the key difference between that and calf. Tonally, I think it's pretty similar.
So yeah, so that was kind of all of our idea about the anniversary drum. We want to involve other people that we really respected, which I certainly do with you guys. Home run, total home run.
Everything's just turned out beautifully, so they should be very proud. The whole team should be really proud of what they've done.
You know, with both of you, with this project, I want someone who tries so many different things, make every mistake. That's what we all do and have done.
Yeah, it's literally been trial and error the whole way to get from where I started to where the business is now. Every point of it has been trial and error. Very frustrating, very expensive at times, but there's something that keeps drawing you back.
People often will ask me, how did you learn how to do what you did? Make mistakes over and over, just like a lot of things, and it's just refusing to fail until you finally come up with something that works.
Thank you for all the support, and join us as we continue to celebrate 30 years in 2025.